Welcome everyone for this special session about reporting on a war. I'm glad that the room is quite full. I was afraid after all these days that maybe some of you are tired, but this is so encouraging. It's sort of unbelievable that it's only one day left before input comes to an end this time. I hope you're enjoying it. I think we had great sessions and great discussions. And yeah, we're gonna start with this session right away. I just wanted to thank Television of Catalonia, Television of Spain, and the rest of the organizations because we made this session possible, along with all the other debates that we're having these days. We prepared a small introductory video for you, and we can watch it right now. Please roll the introduction video.
På, men at man også fantasirakte til.
Aquestes persones agraeixen l'ajuda, però és evident que fa setmanes no la necessitaven.
Beskydninger, de ukrainske soldater sagde, at de skulle se komme væk. Det er så vildt, at en...
Schenischen nimmt der Flüchtlingsstrom eindeutig zu.
Un corredor que se había anunciado muchas veces, pero que siempre había fracasado, pero como dices, esta vez sí, por fin.
The Donetsk People's Republic is saying is that they're suppressing fire.
Setge de Mariupol s'han mogut als baixos que han considerat més segurs, la Concepció de propietat en l'any. Era una de les últimes posicions que fins...
The symbol of this battle.
Terrorijärjestö ISIS kiihdyttää vuodesta 2014.
The latter day's peace is a clear risk. BBC News.
We didn't want to miss the chance due to the current events in Ukraine to talk about this, but this is input, so we're going to focus on the role of public television in this conflict, but in general in these sort of conflicts. The session is going to be divided in two blocks. The first one, we're going to go to Ukraine. We're going to go live to Lviv, where we'll speak with the Ukrainian Public Service CEO, Mykola Chernotitsky. We'll go right away with him, and then we're gonna speak with all these journalists present here, and hopefully another journalist that will join us online. Although we're not completely sure that he'll be able to do it because he's right now on a train, so hopefully we will be able to connect. The journalist here, Manel Elias from Television of Catalonia. He has been Television of Catalonia's correspondent in Moscow since 2015, if I'm not mistaken. Also, Raquel González from Television of Spain, who was sent to Ukraine short after the conflict happened. And also with Alex Springsteen, I don't know if I said it right, but some of you may know Alex because he's an input veteran, if I may say, and maybe some of you don't know that he was born in Kharkiv. So we thought it was good to invite him because we're going to talk with him also about how all the war information is framed in the newsroom. So I don't know, we have a video presentation of some of them, if we can play it. As you saw, we were supposed to have Matilda Kimmer from Denmark. I have to apologize because she cannot make it for last-minute reasons, and I also want to apologize because it was important for us to have more female representation, so sorry about that. That's not going to be possible because of this. And we go now to Lviv, where we are connecting with Suspilne, the Ukrainian Public Service Corporation CEO. Mykola, welcome, first of all, and thank you for joining us from Lviv.
Hello, everyone. I'm so happy to join your discussion, and I hope I will be useful in these issues.
Yeah, Mykola, I'd like to ask you, we know that you're having difficult times, but we'd like to know how difficult it is to adapt to a situation that happens like the one you're facing. How much it changed compared to what you did before?
First of all, we are trying to prepare to the war. In our case, from end of the last year, we prepare some scenario how it could be if attack Kiev or Ukraine, and what a company do, how we relocate to Lviv and organize broadcasting center and reserve center from Lviv, and remove some technical equipment to the Lviv and organize. But obviously, and maybe in the other case the same, you have not enough time to prepare, and morning 24th of February, I was woke up by a call from our head of news and says it started.
Yes, please go on.
And we started, in 1 hour, we started our information marathon on UA First. It's our flagman TV channel, on radio channel, and broadcasting news from each regional what were attacked, because we have the biggest network of journalists and branch in Ukraine. And but on the next day, attack will close to Kiev, and we made decision to remove to Lviv and organize broadcaster from here, because first of all, I think when you broadcasting, you have to be enough sure what your people safety.
Yes.
And from 26th of February, we launched broadcast from Lviv and continue till now. For the different platform, including radio and digital, and obviously TV, some channel. But interesting case for us, it's when the biggest private media group united with public broadcaster and organized 24/7 information marathon UA together. In Ukrainian, it's UA Razom. And it's continue working, and each media groups has 6 hours per day, and step by step each other we continue broadcast, and it's very, I think, unique situation when we united our efforts and share our supplies for each other.
Your resources and expertise, right?
As expert, and we continue working, and I think it's we show them what we united against Russia.
Before we go that to programming, I'd like to, because we were just watching images of that attack of the communications tower in Kyiv that had a direct impact in your activity. How it was to be targeted, because information is normally a target in these sort of conflicts, How did you react knowing that you had shellings very close from your offices and you had to not only do your activity but also protect your crew?
Yes, you're right. It's tower about, I think, 300 meters across street till to our headquarters. But in that time, we leave our headquarters and move to Lviv, and very perfect. All our employees were safety. It's great because if I remember correctly, 5 people were killed by attack on the TV tower, and as consequence, about I think 2 hours in Kiev and some part of Ukraine has no TV signal in digital air. But after 2 hours, guys from company the operator of this TV tower, they relaunched TV tower from the reserve tower, and in 2 hours, 8 TV channel continue broadcasting.
We saw that you had to move to a bomb shelter, and we thank the NHK for having this interesting footage about how did you have to adapt considering the circumstances. I guess your programming also changed a lot. You used to have probably entertainment like anyone else in this room, and all sorts of formats, and I guess it's pretty much about news. But tell us a little bit more about that, please.
It's that experience what I never have, but yes, when the air attack start to go frequency, we organize in bomb shelters reserve studio, and in case when, for example, our journalist, our host work in air, and we have a message about air attack. We have protocol how people removing to bomb shelter. It's the same protocol as a private company now because it's about surviving, and we continue working from bomb shelter. It's normal now in our cases.
I know because we talked before about this that Suspilne was restructured, and currently the executive board is formed by 51% of members that are members of the civil society, NGOs mostly, right? And the other 49% is appointed by the government. I want to ask you, in a conflict of war where propaganda is a very important aspect, how have you dealt with the censorship or the pressure from your own government?
I can say about pressure because according to martial law in Ukraine, the government has the right to military censorship, but for example, it's logical things. We can show place where the was targeted by air attack. For example, next 3 hours we only say about this, but can show this place. It's one of the example of this military censorship. But for us, very important, and Ukrainian is very free country and very sensitive in about freedom of speech. And if someone in our country, in government, thinking to remove from military censorship to politician censorship, I think it will be a big scandal, and I hope so. Not one from representative from government will not do this step. But some restriction we think it's logical. For example, we not show how we're moving our troops because it's a case of safety, and it's important because we know what Russian intelligence watch our marathon or monitor our social media, and we can agree with it.
From a journalistic point of view, and particularly from public media point of view, where is the line? Where is the line where you say, you cannot cross this? This is our job. We are journalists. You are doing your job, okay, but we are doing our job.
It's an interesting question because, as I mentioned before, I have no experience how work in journalism during the war. And in my life, it's first case. But our value as what we share in as public broadcaster and freedom of speech, one of them, I think if someone start to pressure, for example, show what we need to show some politician without reason for PR, it's that line. It's that line, I think. What we can't cross, or maybe it's. I think there are many cases will be, but cool. What now we have discussion, and if someone from media group, for example, doesn't agree, we discussion about it and try to understand the reason of some legislation. And if we don't agree, we discussion and we try to and the more cases we can do, we do it. We did it. It's legislation dismissed.
One of the important things about public television is access, and of course in a war you have some areas that are controlled by, in terms of war, the enemy, and some other areas that, for example, might be under siege and may not have the right communications. How have you dealt in order to reach out to those audiences in those particular circumstances?
One of the big problem for us, because when Russia occupied territory, one of the first their step it's reforming our transmitter on TV tower for the and the shift from Ukrainian to Russian channel. But for us, very important what people have access through the radio station. And AM radio for us, it's very good case. And internet, obviously, social media, people can access to information to the social media through the Telegram, Facebook, etc. And we encoding our signal on satellite, our TV signal, and all people, and including temporary occupied territory of Ukraine, can take signal from the satellite.
Mikola Chernotitsky, CEO at Suspilne. Thank you very much for joining us. We wish you good luck in these difficult times. And who knows, maybe someday you can come at Input too. Thank you. Now we come back to the room with Manel, with Raquel, also with Alex. And I don't know if we had the chance to connect with Antti, who was traveling from Kyiv to Poland. Hopefully he'll be there in a while. But I'm going to start with you, Manel. Going back to the main point of this session, which is the role of public television. How you were the Moscow correspondent of television of Catalonia since 2015, and you were supposed to leave Russia last year, and then all this happened, and you've been needed, right? But I want to ask you, how different is this war compared to others?
Well, first of all, I wanted to say that I'm not a war correspondent.
But you covered the
Yes,
Crimea occupation,
yes.
for example.
But I mean, I understand a war correspondent as somebody that whenever there is a conflict, he's going there to report. And that was not my job. I never was trained to do that. I was covering an area, just an area. I was a correspondent in Moscow, Ukraine, Belarus. But what happened is that in that area started a conflict in 2015, just at the moment where I arrived. The first mission I had was to go to Donbass. Then, a few months after that, the Russian authorities decided to intervene in the Syrian war. So I was attached to the troops, to the Russian troops, and I was in Syria, in Palmyra, in different scenarios. And then this last time, everybody knows what's already going on. So my point is that although I was not trained to do that job, journalism is journalism, always. So if you apply those rules, I think that your job will be good, always. If it's a war or if it's any other story. The only problem when you are in this context, which is terrible, and the regular things are not working, etc., it's just the atmosphere, the conditions are different, but your job is the same. So if you have clear these rules, you will do a good job.
And how important has been public TV this time?
I think we made a difference. I think I can speak as well for my colleagues of the Spanish television. I honestly think that we made a difference, and I will tell you why. Because we were ready. I mean, I was covering this conflict since 2015 because I was the correspondent in Russia. So this is an effort for a company. It's really expensive to have somebody there reporting always. And the difference between a war and, let's say, I don't know, an earthquake, a catastrophe, is like when there's an earthquake, you go, you report, and more or less everybody's doing the same things, and you come back. But a war has a long story. It's not appearing like an earthquake. It has a long story, so we were ready to report on that. What happened when this huge conflict arose? That a lot of companies wanted to have somebody in Russia. And the difference between Russia and Ukraine is that to report from Ukraine is quite easy. You need the time to get there, but you will get there and you will be able to do your job. And in Russia, it's not working like this. You need an accreditation that takes time to have it. And once the conflict started, the accreditations stopped working.
You had it.
So I had it, and not just that one, but as I saw that the situation could be difficult, I started the process of asking the accreditation to go to Donbass, to the war zone, really in advance. So when this started, we were ready, and we were in the place, and with the papers to move.
We'll get back to that situation.
But just to understand, as soon as I started, the private companies started calling me and saying, "Hey, Manel, do you have anybody there who can work for us?" Because they were seeing that, okay, in Ukraine we have people, but who can do the reporting from Russia? So they had to hire like an emergency exit. The journalists that were working for the press, writing press, but it's not the same to report for the TV or to write a story. So who was reporting on the field, speaking with people, taking good testimonies, knowing the area? We were really few.
Speaking the language too.
Speaking the language. So, and most of them, if we speak about the Spanish landscape of TV stations, we were the public TV stations.
For you, Raquel, you were part of a group of several journalists from Spanish TV that were sent to the region to cover the conflict in a very extensive way, like many other public organizations did. I'm asking you the same question, but a different way. Is it a question of budget and resources, or also about editorial choices compared to other non-public organizations?
Hello, everyone. First of all, I want to say that I am not a war correspondent, too. But in this occasion, I went to Ukraine. I think that both. The explication is both, because we have the resources, but we want to bid for this information. It's very clear. I completely agree with Manel, because, for example, in the Spanish TV, in the Spanish television, when the war started, we already had 2 teams there in Ukraine, and we have also an office correspondent in Moscow, in Russia. But we have 2 teams, six person, 2 teams in Ukraine, the 24th of February. And the day before, we sent another to the border to tell the drama of the refugees in Poland, and another team. So when I went to Ukraine, that I think that it was mid-March, more or less, I think that maybe 7 or 8 teams from public radio and TV, because we joined forces, were there. And this is the explication that, for example, me, that I'm not a war correspondent, because I always make social reports, TV could allow that someone like me and my team stay in another part of the country telling other stories, not in front of the line, because it's not my job, normal, not the military part of the war, not the hardest part of the war, but other stories that we think and we bet for telling to the people. Something like, first of all, we stay in Lviv at the northwest, and after we went to Odessa in the southwest. When I was in Odessa, it was a quiet area, not like now. Some shelling, but not too much. We could speak, for example, about mental health. That it's something that, if you are speaking about a war, it's something very strange, really. We speak about the limits of the humor. For example, we sent a piece of news about that because in Odessa, every 1 of April, they celebrate the Humorina. It's a festival of humor, and it was really a big reflection. Everyone says, the people was divided between people who wants to celebrate like other years, and people that say, no, it's not time to laugh. And it was very interesting for us to speak about it. So it's something like, it's impossible to think that other private channels can speak about it. So I think that it's a question about resources, of course, but I think that if they have the money, that maybe they have, they don't bet for this information, for this.
Because they follow the main headlines and the impact probably, unlike public TV, or at least this is what we believe. And I wanted to ask you about that precisely, Alex, because you were not sent to Ukraine, I understand this time, but you were born in eastern Ukraine, in Kharkiv, and you, let's say, in your organization, you're a Ukraine expert, if we can say like that. How important was to frame it in the newsroom?
By the way, I don't want to be left alone. I'm also not a war correspondent. And I don't work in news anyway. I work in current affairs, which is one of the reasons I wasn't sent. But I also want to provide a little bit more about my background, because it actually is a little bit misleading just to say that I was born in Kharkiv. First of all, I was not born in Ukraine. I was born in the Soviet Union, and it's kind of important. I emigrated with my parents when I was very young. I have that connection to Ukraine, but I also am a Russian speaker, and that's what I speak at home to this day. I don't have any particular, just, in framing what I'm going to be saying, I don't want people to get the impression that I'm some kind of, Ukrainian or Ukrainian patriot. I'm not. I'm a Canadian. I have probably more interest in some ways, culturally, a lot more interest in Russia, because I speak Russian. I watch Russian movies. I go there all the time. I'm culturally Russian, so my connection is to both places.
But how important is that background and that context in order to present it to your audience?
It's very important in the sense that I am not a Ukrainian and I'm not somehow connected to Ukraine. I want to make that very, very clear. I'm interested in both countries equally. As someone who was born in the Soviet Union when they were both part of the same country, and also culturally, I go to Ukraine all the time. I've been to all the cities that have been mentioned in Ukraine. I go there very often lately. I was teaching investigative journalism, actually, the journalist from that company. One other thing I want to stress, I'm not speaking on behalf of the CBC in here at all. In other words, when I'm going to say these are my views, I mean, they may coincide with CBC views, but they may not either. So I just want to make that clear. So then your question was about reporting.
We have a responsibility not only when we're doing a job, in the field, but also the way we present it to the audiences, especially because we are from the West, and this is a conflict where West and not West is an important issue.
I think that
in terms of objectivity, neutrality, accuracy, all these things are important.
Truth, I think, for me, truth is the most important aspect of being a journalist. Beyond objectivity, I think objectivity is a very loaded word. I'm not sure that people are objective. If you're standing in the middle of Kiev and missiles are flying into you, you're not going to be objective. It's just not going to happen. You're going to be talking about, when we talk about what happened, in terms of context, in terms of framing. One of the things, for instance, I have a slight problem with, not in the context of our discussion, but in calling what's happening a conflict. It's an invasion. It's an invasion of a country, and I think that is the word that should be used most of the time. Now, I understand we have to use synonyms, we can use war, but when, for instance, I see a headline on BBC and it says blah, 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 conflict, I think that's an editorial choice. That's an editorial choice that kind of creates a certain equivalence. That's another thing that we need to look at from the way we frame it. When Donald Trump was president of the United States, at a certain point, the media, both in the US and everywhere else, decided that they're going to call what he says lies. It began by euphemisms of certain kinds, but at a certain point, the reporters, particularly in the US, reached a stage where they started doing that. Now, there are people who didn't like that, but I think that that's an important factor in trying to tell the truth. The other issue, again, is not just simply showing that a missile went here and people are dying here, and there's people are being raped in Bucha, but to give a lot more explanation as to what's going on, what's behind this, what happened before, what Vladimir Putin is doing, why he might be doing it, how it's wrong. I mean, I want to stress that is a very important aspect of this. I'm not going to beat around the bush here. It's not, there's a country that's been invaded for no reason. We've seen that. That's been documented. And I think that when we do our stories, we need to keep that in mind. That has to be in the background, in the context. It cannot be somebody said this, and the response from the foreign minister of Russia, Lavrov, is that Hitler was partly Jewish, and therefore that's why I think that Ukrainians are anti-Semites, even though their president is a Jew. I mean, that's a news story, but it has to be framed from the point of view of who is saying it and what his record is. And I think that I'm not sure that we've succeeded in doing that, and I'm saying we collectively in the media in the West.
We're going to have time to discuss that. I don't know, could you confirm, guys, if we have Antti? No, we don't have him. It's a pity because today is a very relevant day in terms of Finnish politics. They just, it seems that they just decided they're going to join NATO, or at least that's what they pretend. And that has a direct impact in the regional politics. And I'm going back to you, Manel, because you talked about that credentials that Russia gave you and how that played an important role in order to cover from the other side of the border, not only from Ukraine, but also from Russia. But we all know, we've heard that Russia has been playing with that. If you don't, and that's related to what Alex said, if you don't use the words in special intervention, I forgot which
Operation, special operations.
The concept that you used. If you're talking about war, you could be revoked that visa. I mean, how important, how much pressure did you get, and especially because you could stop being able to do the same thing that you've been doing.
Yes, well, to be with no visa will be the luckiest solution, because you can end up with 15 years in prison just to use the word war, which, by the way, I've been using it yesterday from Moscow. and you get this exposition. You can be 15 years in war. I'm wearing a T-shirt today with the presa. This is the press word in Russia, made by a company that is not reporting from Russia anymore. All the independent media that was doing more or less a good job. For instance, Novaya Gazeta, that received the Nobel Prize, one of the editors received the last Nobel Peace Prize, stopped working in Russia because just for calling a war, as my colleague said, invasion, you are exposed to 15 years to prison. So.
And they were about to lose their license. They'd been warned.
Yeah.
Twice, and the third time that you're warned, you basically stop operation.
Yeah. So I think that here there's the difference between if you are a Russian media reporting for the Russian people, I could not have been the job I've been doing. I would be already arrested or something worse. So here I'm not the bravest man on the earth. I was calculating the situation, and I got to the conclusion that that it was worth it to report from Russia, trying to being an independent journalist. And this is really important, because in this war, what we have been seeing so far is generally the reports from the Ukraine side, of course, as Alex said, tend to portray Russia as an invader, etc. But what we see from the Russian side is an amazing propaganda. In fact, I was in a press tour with the Russian troops to Mariupol, and they led me into Mariupol, the Russian troops. So if we have the colleague, it's better to use the...
We'll go back to you with that.
Yeah.
Auntie, I don't know if you can hear us. Hopefully, yes. Thank you very much for being able to make it. We know you're in a train, so we appreciate that. We wanted to ask you right away about what happened today. You know, Finland is determined apparently to join NATO, and that could have an impact in the politics in the region. And I want to ask you, how do you deal, knowing that you have a responsibility in shaping public opinion in your country, and especially when your country has a direct border with Russia? How do you deal with aspects, these general aspects like objectivity, or where is my line, how I should present this or that?
I think I heard a little bit about the discussion there, and I think journalism is about the truth, and it's about, I've been to different conflicts, and usually there is somebody who starts a conflict, there is somebody who gains from that conflict, there is some party that kind of keeps that conflict going. And this war started actually in eastern Ukraine in 2014. I was there, and it was very clearly Russia that was driving that eastern Ukrainian conflict. And now, when Russia, after all these years, didn't achieve its goals and made this massive attack against Ukraine, trying to invade the whole country, so it's quite clear, like the big picture, what is happening. It's Russia attacked another country, that hadn't provoked Russia. And that's like the big picture, and it's objective and it's true. At least I feel it, and probably many in Finland, because the Finns are now joining NATO. So, and I think it's very good for me, because I've been 8 years there in Eastern Ukraine reporting about that, and I was also now in Ukraine before this attack started, and I was there when it started. So that kind of was the base for my understanding of what's happening.
Is it any different than other conflicts that you've covered? Because you have covered other wars, for example, in the Middle East. This time, is it different at all?
Yeah, I would say it's really different, and also very different from 2014, when everything was a little bit more difficult to understand. It was kind of a hybrid operation war that Russia started, and I was there when it started all the time. It was really difficult to understand, and the reaction was not so strong. But this time, and in many other conflicts, it's also a little bit unclear what's happening. For example, I was in northeastern Syria when Turkey attacked the Kurds there, and it was the same. They said that they need to secure them, and things like that. And often conflicts come and go so quickly, so people don't really get to know what is the big picture. But this time it was kind of, because the US had given all this information about this attack that was coming. So it was really clear from day one, that first morning, 24th, when I was reporting, I could feel it, how like people this time really kind of understood what's happening here.
This is a question for all of you. How we've talked about propaganda, but I want to ask you about the propaganda from Ukraine. How do you immunize yourself, in order to not to have the temptation to take sides, especially when one is obviously the invader country and the other one is the invader?
I don't know, like take sides, like YLE, for example, has like this document, like YLE stands for some values. We have some values that we work for: democracy, human rights, international law. And in this case, Russia, by trying with the military power to move borders in Europe, so they are breaking international law. Obviously, they are breaking humanitarian law. So I don't know if it's taking sides, but it's quite clear, these things, to say it. And of course, like the reason Finland now is joining NATO after all these years is because there is a country that uses massive force to try to subjugate a neighboring country. And Finland, as a small neighboring country to Russia, of course, sees this as a threat.
And
can I just weigh in a little bit? I think that one of the things, and I know it's an uncomfortable thing to say, but I really believe that we need to unlearn. We as journalists, and I don't know, public service journalists, we do more depth. I guess that's the one difference between us and privates. But really, it's all media. I think we need to unlearn some of these concepts like objectivity and both sides. I really think it's a mistake. I think that we need to, what my colleagues just said and what I said earlier, is we need to find the truth. We need to find accuracy. And I don't think we need to, for example, if the entire, everything that Russia is doing, I did a story just recently about propaganda. I watched, personally, I watched a number of these programs that are on first channel and second channel of Russian TV. They're unbelievable. They're beyond belief. What the kind of lies that perpetrate make Donald Trump seem to be the most honest person in the history of the world. And so it just seems kind of honestly silly to me to be comparing Russia's propaganda with a few clumsy attempts by Ukraine to do X, Y, and Z. It's just, it's not relevant. And I think that it's really important when we talk about 2014, for example. One of the things in which I think all the world's media failed miserably, and I think are continuing to fail in, is in framing that particular war. we've had these kinds of terms like Russia-backed separatists and Russia-backed rebels. I think that's bullshit. That's total bullshit. I mean, I want to call a spade a spade. This was a war that was started and perpetrated by Russia. They paid for it, they hired the people, they gave them the money, they gave them the weapons, and they asked them. And the idea of talking about that particular situation that started in 2014 as some kind of internal conflict or civil war is just a lie. It's just not true. It's bad journalism. And I think that we're still kind of doing it. I mean, I know that sometimes people talk about these disputed territories, they talk about these republics, they talk about referenda, and I know that there's sometimes, there's some kind of context given, well, it's not a fair referendum. It's not a referendum. It's in other words, we cannot be using because the audience, a journalist may understand all that, and an academic may understand all that, but the average viewer who watches it and hears words like referendum, they think, okay, well, this sounds sort of quasi-democratic, and these rebels, there's probably something to it, and maybe they were really somehow harassed because they spoke Russian, for instance. That's one of the red herrings that's been brought up. And I think those are exactly the kinds of things that we need as journalists when we do something in depth, explain to viewers and to readers that this is the real story. Call it whatever you want, the objective story. Otherwise, when Vladimir Putin says that NATO was bombing Belgrade back in '99, and therefore I have every right to do this, the average viewer will look at it and say, you may have a point. Anyway.
And this is precise. Yeah, please.
Maybe the objective of the
Can I just really briefly answer really briefly? I think it was a very good statement by you. I feel very much the same, and I was there in 2014 when Eastern Ukraine war started, and I also used sometimes words like separatist or rebels, but then even though many others, even in our company, continued that, I completely stopped using that kind of words, and you have to be very, very careful with Russia or somebody else who is skilled at propaganda, not to take their words, their narrative into your mouth, and not to let them tell that story if it's not true. And so that is very important.
Raquel?
No, I think that maybe the propaganda of Russia and Ukraine have different objectives. Because Russia, I think that they want to win the battle of the story with these people, with their people, with the Russian people, and for the other part of the world is something like lies directly, not propaganda lies, even grotesque lies, someone. Maybe Ukrainian people or Ukrainian government wants to sometimes confuse the enemy. I think that some propaganda is the objective. And all of this, I think that the great importance that has journalists stay in the field, because if you are staying there, you can speak with witness, speak with neighbors. Because if you are in Bucha, you can speak with the neighbors who has seen everything. So it's different because, for example, my experience before I went to Ukraine, I make a lot of work in the newsroom, and it was so difficult to differentiate above all the first days of the war, because the wave of information was so great that because you have information in this media, in the social media, in the press agencies, of course, but also everyone has a cousin that has a friend that send you a video with, you don't know if he is in Kherson or in Kharkov, so the wave of information was so great that it was very difficult really to know what is the truth. And for example, in our experience, it was very, very important a department that we have about verification, because the direction of TVE gave the order that we can't edit any pictures that the verification service tell us, okay, it's okay or not. I have doubts, or it's false directly, because the first days, a lot of pictures about the war of Donbass in 2014, at the first days, all the time, the shellings and the fires were in the past.
Even the rumors at the beginning that the president was about to leave or to flee. But again, the same question, is the public media better prepared to verify, to filter than others?
I think so. I think so, really. In our experience, I don't know really if other private channels have this kind of service. And, for example, in some very important channel here in Spain, they open a news with a picture of a video game. It happened.
Say it again, please.
With a picture of a video game.
Oh.
It happened here in Spain.
Yes.
So I don't know if they have this kind of service. I think no. But because it's expensive also. We have maybe 6 or 7 people only seeing videos and verification. And we have a network in Europe because we work with other European channels. And if we have verified some pictures, we join with the other. So the fourth is important in Europe, not only in TV. So I think it's a difference between channels, I think.
I would add
I don't really know what they have, but I guess no.
About verifying, I completely agree. It is very important to verify, but I think that the question is how you use those resources. I mean, it's true that public broadcasters tend to have more resources. One of the things, for instance, I think it's very important is to hire. It's not, the truth is that most people in the West don't have a lot of understanding of this, and including in the media. It's people, they haven't covered this. So I think what you need to do at that point is hire people who do. Hire people who speak the two languages, Russian and Ukrainian, first of all, because you need to be able to look at visuals. One of the things that's extremely important is what is it that you can get through YouTube or through various social media? Because the truth is, most of us, journalists, can't be everywhere, but there's a lot of stuff available, a lot of interesting information material that is coming through different Telegram channels, which is one of the social media in both Ukraine and Russia, and other places. And to do that, you need people who speak the languages. I think that's absolutely crucial to do. And the other thing is you need to get, call it whatever you want, consultants. It's, in other words, people who have a good, and I'm not talking about on air, I mean behind the scenes, people who have a good understanding of the history of the region, even recent history.
I would like to know what you think, because we've been having this conversation here among us, but please feel free to raise your hands from now on and maybe disagree on something that has been said, or even, have your comments to enrich this debate. Anyone? Yes, please.
Hi, I'm Bill from the United States. The question of verification is extremely important because we, the viewers or the readers or the listeners to public media want to believe in you. We believe in you, in fact. We have trust in you. But we need to know that this verification is happening. Otherwise, we'll start having doubts. I've noticed that the New York Times and the Washington Post reporting on the war in the Ukraine, they are always talking, there's a long section about how do we verify the information that we have, because they're trying to maintain their reputation. And we do trust the New York Times and even the Washington Post to tell us some kind of truth. So I just want to underscore what you've been saying in terms of the importance of that.
Yes, Auntie, were you talking to us or were you talking to someone in the train?
I was talking to a passenger who said that I have to take down the volume on this debate.
Okay. Yes, we have another gentleman there. Yes. Can you state
Brian
your name?
from the United States. Manel, your story was interrupted. I want to know how you got into Mariupol, and I want to know whether you intend to get back.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, we forgot about that.
Yeah, well,
Sorry.
and it's linked with propaganda. We need to understand how the Russian propaganda works, because if not, we are missing, for instance, the main question that a lot of people is always asking me. And why does the Russians support Vladimir Putin? So this is important. They invite me to get into Mariupol, and I was amazed by that because I could not believe it. And they were taking me there because they were convinced that I will be reporting the things they wanted me to report. As, by the way, were doing some other Western correspondents, which these days are speaking in Duma, in the parliament, in the Russian parliament, in the public chamber, saying that they have proofs that what happened in Mariupol was made by Ukrainians. So, the same scenario, the same victims, the same destroyed city, you can do two stories. One to try to find the truth, or the other one just replying, saying the same, where was said. For instance, the theater in Mariupol. You got a Russian soldier that knows 1,000 times more than you about weapons. 1,000 times more than you. So he's better than you on weapons. And he starts showing you how the theater is destroyed. And their conclusion is this was shelling from inside. Look, the walls, look the structure, blah, 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 blah. So this was made by the Azov soldiers. Then we have an independent report from Associated Press, and it's clear that was a Russian plane that bombed that theater, which had, by that time, more or less 600 people. Most of them were mother, children, and some, that's a fact as well, some soldiers. The Russians left there, for us to see it, some Ukrainian soldiers that probably were from the right wing Azov battalion. But the same story was used that way. So Russians believe that Mariupol, when I say Russians, I want to make clear, the Russians who follow the main channels, the federal channels, believe that the city was destroyed by the Azov soldiers because they were using the main buildings with innocents, with people, to defend themselves. And when they saw that there was no any exit, they bombed these buildings from inside. This is what they want us make to believe. But the important thing is some of the Russian people believe it.
Not more than some.
A lot. It's a lot.
Raquel mentioned the network. You know, we have networks. Public companies have normally networks of correspondents all over the world. That context, that tradition, is definitely a value. Do you think that played the fact that you had been in Moscow for a while, that generated trust, and Russians thought that you might do a good job?
I think that they were surprised because I knew about that press tour, and I asked if I could join. And they told me, well, why not? And I don't know if when they know that I'm from the Catalan company, if they may think that maybe as there's this separatist problem here, maybe this guy will say that Donbass, well, I don't know. I don't understand. But I was really amazed and surprised. And what I was doing, because I had, of course, really ethical problems with myself, to join or not to join. So what I did first is to talk to my bosses and to say, I said to them, I have this opportunity. I think can be a valuable one, but don't say anything. Don't sell it in advance. Let's see what I can do and if I can work freely or not. And once I was inside Mariupol, of course, I had the Russian soldiers around me. They do like a perimeter, and you cannot go farther than them. But I saw the people. It was amazing. They were desperate people. It's like the whole city, all of a sudden, full of homeless people that had regular lives and fighting for a piece of wood to make a fire in front of the houses. So I could see some people staring at me, like this woman. Then when I had the opportunity to talk to them alone, not with a group of journalists, the first thing I was saying to them is like, I can speak Russian. I'm not Russian. I'm not Ukrainian. I'm just a journalist that wants to know your truth. Do you want to explain me something? And they were explaining to me in Russian, clearly, that they were living a normal life, more or less a normal life in Mariupol until the moment this specoperacja, this special operation, this war started. So it was really easy for me to get the truth there.
Anyone
they were
else?
ready to speak.
And more comments, more questions?
No.
The question was, will you be able to go back?
To Mariupol, not. So,
to Russia?
Russia, yes. I try, when I write my sentences, because one of the things I do, and this, I think there's a dangerous trend now on the TVs in general, and this affects the public TV stations as well. Everybody wants the live connections. Everybody. So they want you to be speaking in front of the camera constantly. Luckily, I have my bosses are bosses, but good people as well. So they trust me, and more or less, I can do my job. But it's an effort. You have to fight. Now they want you to speak on the camera because you can fill a lot of minutes and to go through a lot of programs. I try always to go to the place to take all the material that I think it's important, to wait some minutes, to go out, and when my mind is cold and I think I could do the story that I think I have to do, then I report.
Is it the same for you, Raquel and Antti? And do you see any difference compared to other non-public organizations?
Yes, well, the private organization also are making live connection every time. It's the same. The difference is maybe if you have another team, you have more time to make some reports. For example, when I was there, we were 2 teams. So each day, one of us make the live connections, and the other one can make a trip to other city or something like that, and you have more time to make a report. And speaking about time, I want to make a question to Manel, because it's a very big difference between private and public media also, the time that you have for your pieces of news. And if you don't see the pieces of news about Mariupol of Manel, please do it. Because Manel made a great job. All the reports are great, but the Mariupol piece of news, it was super great. I think 3, 4, 5 minutes? How many time?
Yeah,
it's something impossible to see in a private channel.
Yeah, what I do when I go to these places that, and I know that I have an important story, what I do is the first thing I say to the bosses is like, please, no limitation of time. Let me just explain it because it's worth it. And I know that they trust me because they are confident in my, well, it's a lot of years already doing it. This is first. And second, use the same story midday and night because I don't want to change it. Because this is my story. This is the story. This is what, I don't want to change it. Why to change it? Just for the people to see that it's the same story. It's an important story. I think sometimes this at this level I had at least 2 stories.
2 stories, yes.
That I think are, and I'm really humbled to say it, but it's like this, almost historical pieces because I was in the place, in the moment.
But you did have access.
Yeah, no. So I was there. And I said, let's repeat it.
I wanted to ask the same question to Antti, but I think we lost the signal again. Please feel free. Is there someone that wants to?
So I will fill the gap just a second, because she asked if I'm going to come back or not, and I did not answer. So when I'm saying that I'm writing the stories cold-minded, is that I pay a lot of attention of not to commit any mistake, that the Russian government can tell me this is fake.
That they don't have an excuse to.
Then I'm done.
Yes.
So I have to be really accurate. So I take time for two reasons. Just the first one and the main one is to be relaxed. I don't want the audience to feel that I'm suffering in the stories. And sometimes if you're trying to report from the place to do the really long live or really stand-ups that are, they can see you suffering, and I'm not interested on that. And second one, because I cannot commit any mistake. If I write a sentence that they can demonstrate that it's fake, then I'm done. Then I'm done.
The only thing I would say is, from the point of view of returning, is you have to consider, is it worth returning if you have to compromise journalistic standards in order not to get into bad books?
Yeah.
And so I would argue that right now, returning to Russia, and I mean, I understand that reporters who are based in Moscow want to be there, but the value of being in Russia right now, with the kinds of restrictions that they have placed on journalists, is much, much lower than it would be anywhere else or at any time before. So if the question is, can you do a story in which you expose yourself as being, by them, seen as being critical, or they can invent some kind of fake, I think you still have to do it. And, you know, if you can't get back, you can't get back. That would certainly be my approach.
You know, my fear always is not to be able to get back to Russia. It's not to being able to be back to Barcelona.
Yes.
That's my fear.
Or not being able to get back to Russia and doing your job in the right conditions.
Yeah, but if I cannot do my job, there's no problem for me, because I'm not going to report. I'm saying, guys, I'm sorry, I cannot do my job, so I'm not reporting today. The problem is that the controls now to get in and to get out from Russia are much more complicated. And when I'm intending
maybe the
to
martial law.
Yeah, well, but when I'm trying to get in, you have FSB people there making some questions, but I'm not nervous, because if they don't allow me to get in, I go back to Barcelona.
Yes.
Well, but to go out from the country is my...
We have more comments or questions, please.
Yes, probably on a more personal level. I mean, in the probably last 20 years, we witnessed several wars, and you were there, you reported the truth, you seeked for the truth, and we were aware, and destruction keeps going on. So my question is how you deal with this, and if it affects, one, your job, when you feel, if ever you feel it's not going anywhere, and second, how you deal with this fact personally.
Mm-hmm. Well, this time in my company, this is interesting to mention it as well. They offer us special services of psychologists even to help us to cope with it. And I was reluctant. I was thinking, no, I know how to do it. I've been there already. So I have my techniques, not to, because you are really affected. But I thought I had my ways to deal with it, and they were completely wrong. So thanks to this woman, she explained me some things that are really important to know. And I think this is so to consider it, at least, to have these services, like to help the journalists that are there in the middle of this chaos, that when you come back, maybe it's better to have a chat with somebody that knows what can be in your mind, that you don't suspect it, that can happen.
There's a different aspect of war. I mean, you're asking personally, as Sergio said, I was born in Kharkiv. This is the second largest city in Ukraine, which is not quite as destroyed as Mariupol, but on the way to being. I still have close relatives in Kharkiv. I have friends, I go there all the time, and I have relatives in Russia as well, relatively close. So obviously, all of those things weigh on me. But at the same time, I actually find that it's easier for me to deal with this by doing journalism, by actually doing the story, as opposed to, sitting and dwelling and feeling sorry for myself. We're professionals. I think that, I know you were asking more about if you see people lying dead and how does it affect you. And obviously those are important things, PTSD and so on. But we're also human beings, and we react to war and to injustice, which is a key aspect of this war, the same way as anybody else does.
I have a really good friend working for a public radio that loved Russia. She was reporting from there. I'm not going to say the company and the name. And she could not report about this war. She could not. She tried and she could not. She stopped it.
Before the question, if you don't mind, we're going to go back to Antti, just in case we lose the signal again. Antti, we wanted to ask you about, how well understood have you felt you were back in Helsinki? Did you have, unlike maybe other organizations that are not like YLE, the right amount of time to say what you really wanted to say? You mentioned before that back in 2014, maybe they didn't understand so much what was going on in Crimea. Did you feel that it was different, and did you feel that public TV offered you everything you needed in order to tell your story? We have no sound. I don't know if you're talking, but maybe the sound is muted.
Okay, yeah, sorry. So we have, because we are like a big company for Finnish Standard, the biggest, so we have TV, radio, internet. So I think it's pretty good because we have like different kind of programs. There's the news, but then there's of course also on the radio, there is more these kind of longer programs that are for, about politics, and you can speak for a long time, and many people maybe think they're boring, but so there is different ways to report about it. So I feel that's a really good aspect with public broadcasting.
Do you have the ability to shape the story the way you really want it to be, the way you've seen it, in order to to reflect that truth that you've seen?
Yeah, I think so. And like one thing that I think is really important with public broadcasting is that because it's not like a business in that sense that we have to sell advertisement or whatever. So I think it's really, really important that we also go to Eastern Ukraine or Nagorno-Karabakh, or when it's not the big story. Like all these years when there was this war in the Eastern Ukraine. So I tried to go there every year, at least like 2 times or something. And even though it was really not the big story, and my bosses were probably not that happy, but I wanted to go there. So I think that is important with public broadcasting, that we just go reporting about things that are important, even though they are not so popular. But now when this attack started at the end of February, I went through Lviv here on one of these trips when I came here, and it was an amazing amount of journalists, and now everybody wants to come here, and it's so many journalists, and it's really, really good and important. But it's also important to come when it's not like, let's say, after half a year, if this war grinds on, or in a year, that we still come here and continue reporting.
You had all that expertise, all that background, all the context accumulated thanks to going there once in a while. Let's go with your question. Sorry to make you wait.
No. Thank you for this talk and for your job, of course. Do you agree with the political measure of blocking the Russian media?
Well,
feel free to answer. Remember,
I don't.
We're trying to, yes.
I don't think that's... Russian media are significant from the point of view of doing propaganda inside Russia. Outside of that, I don't think they have much significance. I think that if you're talking about RT or something like this, is that what you mean? Or Russian language media that are... I think that we have enough competition in the West to deal with Russia's propaganda. So I don't think we should be worried about what the lies that you see on those channels, like RT, for example, Russia Today. I think that a lot of people think that we need to stop that because it's propaganda, but I think that the propaganda we should be worried about is not propaganda that Russia is perpetrating in the West, because we can deal with it. It's the propaganda that Russia is perpetrating, that Putin is perpetrating, and has managed to convince a critical mass of Russians that, you know, Ukrainians are neo-Nazis, that are killing themselves, that they're protecting them, and so on and so forth. That's the propaganda that's of significance for me.
Yes.
And I would add that I think that Vladimir Putin, for instance, is quite happy with that decision of blocking the channels. Because what happens in Russia is like, well, they say like, if you close RT or Sputnik, we'll go for BBC, for instance. And it's not the same. It's not the same. BBC can have some defects. Maybe it's not perfect, but it's not the same. For instance, the Russian TV channels there. I've been in demonstrations of the opposition in Russia with 1,000 people detained in few hours. 1,000 people detained in few hours. In the main street in Moscow, Tverskaya. That day, at night, watching the news, the first story was the protest in France from the yellow
jackets,
yellow jackets,
vests,
with 200 or 300 people in the street. It was the beginning of those protests, and you kept on watching the program, and those 1,000 people detained in the central street in Moscow were not appearing at all. When we know, and this is a university of journalism, that the closer, the more important is the story, not for Russia. So you go for RT, I go for BBC. And I repeat, they are not doing the same. One is propaganda, and the other is journalism that can have some mistakes. So I think it's a mistake. You are doing bigger these companies that don't have an influence here. If I ask here, tell me the name of one program of Russia Today, we can be in progress to name just one. But the news that they are being censored, everybody knows. So I would not go that way.
We're coming to the end. We should be wrapping up this session of reporting on a war and the role of public television. Any final comments, Raquel and Antti?
I was thinking about the difference. I think there are a lot. Maybe one that we haven't said here is about the importance to return to the sites that has been news, no? And the importance to stay there, not only in the moment that happened, because now everyone is in Ukraine, but let's see in some time, no? And for example, that example is Afghanistan. Afghanistan in August, with the Taliban took the power, everyone was there, the world, and the whole world looked Afghanistan, and not now, no?
We had by the way, we had a very interesting session here at Input in the White Room, and I see Jorge, who was the journalist that reported on those days in Afghanistan. And he was precisely doing that, going back and forward. And he says he wants to go back, so he agrees with what you just said.
Yes. I went to Kabul, to Afghanistan, 6 months later, in February. And it was a so different country than in the past. I think that it's our responsibility, our compromise, to return to the sites that has been placed. And now here in Spain, the only channels that could allow is public media, I think.
Antti, before you reach Poland, anything you want to add to this session? Maybe you already. We have some not stable connection. If you can hear us, we have another question here.
No, I can hear you. I don't know for how long. But
Yes. What?
I think the train started moving, so internet is really bad.
It's okay.
So I think it's better that you discuss there.
Yeah, thank you, Antti. We cannot hear you very well. If you can hear us, we're going to end it soon, so don't worry if the connection ends soon. And we thank you for your participation, if you can hear us. And we finish with your comment. Jorge, please.
Yeah, it's a little comment. Sorry by my English. I was 46 days in Ukraine now, and the people that hit me was Ukrainian forces, and I worked with the forces, with the defense forces from Ukraine. When I was in Mariupol, I have a lot of incident too. That meaning it's important for the public service. Tell the truth. That is not only Russian. We have a lot of incident, and I think it's important. All my heart is with the Ukrainian people, but this was very dangerous sometimes working in the front line because Ukrainian people too, and I was accused of being a spy so many times.
By Ukrainians.
They put me, by Ukrainians, they put me on the floor, and they take other journalists that was with me. We was 100 journalists in one hotel, and a lot of Western journalists, they never go out. We was only 5-6 journalists that we go to Busha, and then they writing from us.
So let me ask you this.
I will try to explain that there are some difference.
So the difference is between public media and non-public media, or just different editorial lines, no matter what's the nature of that organization?
I don't know about public media or private media because I'm working for private media, History Channel, Channel 13, and CNN. But it's not like everybody is I was censored so many times because I was talking about because I was with black people. We tried to escape, and there was a lot of racism in Poland, and we have a lot of problems to working with and we talk every day with the territorial forces from Ukraine because I have a very good friend, and I come back in 15 days. But I want to try to explain that not everything is like this, because Ukraine have a big propaganda too. This is the only point.
No, and I think it was a very interesting point. We should, unless you have something really necessary that you have to say, we should be...
Just to make clear that in Russia, in private companies, there are really good journalists. And there are really good freelancers working there and doing an amazing job. The difference are the companies, if they are providing the necessary things to do your job. But the problem is not the journalist itself.
Very good points to end this session. I thank you very much for joining us. I know this was a late session. I hope you enjoy the rest of the days that you have in Barcelona, the ones that come from abroad, and have a very good final day here at Input tomorrow. Thank you very much.
No.